Hey Deckers, you've probably seen videos around the FSR 3 mod, so we finally got our hands on it and thought we would test it out on Hogwarts Legacy to see just how much of a difference this really makes and whether it's worth it at this point in time. As you can see from the offset, there's definitely a huge FPS difference, but there's quite a quality difference as well. For these tests, I've been running the AMD FSR 2 quality on the Steam Deck OLED. Performance on the LCD is pretty much the same, with the full medium settings, no motion blur or depth of field, and with the FSR 2 quality with a bit of sharpening as well. Now for the FSR 3 mod, you have to run the DLSS performance version, otherwise you get some really bad ghosting, and you can't use any sharpening either, otherwise that just breaks the mod at the moment, and we'll come on to that a bit more in a little while. Now as we look at some footage full screen here then of the FSR 2 quality, there really has been quite a lot of improvements made in the later versions of Hogwarts Legacy, and this is running a lot smoother anyway on the Steam Deck. But when we come to FSR 3, you have to run the performance mode, otherwise all the textures and the lighting just goes absolutely crazy. And although that you are getting a bit of extra frames per second, there is a substantial amount of extra blurriness in this, mostly because of that performance mode and also because you can't use any of that sharpening. Now it does look better on the lighting front some of the times, but because of that performance mode, you do lose that quality. Look at the quality of the image there on the right hand side. You do lose out on that quite a lot. Obviously inside Hogwarts, there is a huge range of frames per second. Start off around 50, but we can still dip down into those 30s just at any point in time as so much stuff is rendering. On the FSR 3 performance, this definitely stays a lot higher, but there definitely seems to be some micro stutter, and it doesn't always feel like it is actually running at 60 plus frames per second, especially running around inside the halls. And we still get a minor amount of ghosting here and there because of that FSR 3 performance mode. However, when we are in places like Hogsmeade, it does seem to feel a little bit better, but we get that texture rasterization and meshing happening on some of the fast movement, but we do still get a little bit of ghosting on the character on the FSR 2 quality side. As you'll see here, it's not immediately apparent, it looks clearer on the FSR 2 quality side, but when I freeze frame, we do see better quality on the FSR 2 side, but again, if you look closely, you do get some of that ghosting. But on the FSR 3, you're getting some of those mesh and pixelation issues. So it is a bit of preference. And I know a lot of people ask about input latency, and it is a little bit noticeable. And this is the problem with FSR 3 on lower FPS games, is it's trying to double or triple frames that don't really exist. And you do need a better base to really push FSR 3 games that little bit more to make advantage of FSR 3. And this was apparent in combat. It definitely felt much more responsive on the FSR 2 quality side, but we do really drop those frames per second in later combat. On the FSR 3 side, it is manageable. It's a very small delay. It's nothing major that's going to ruin the experience completely for you, at least no more than the amount of microstutter that gets entertained. And as I said, even though it's showing 50 to 60 frames per second, a lot of the time it doesn't actually feel like it's performing that much better than the FSR 2 side. As you'll see here, we were around the 40 to 50 frames per second, but even with just a single enemy levitating in front of you quite closely, we do dip under that 30 frames per second mark on FSR 2 quality still. But I just don't like running this game in FSR 2 performance mode. The amount of pixelation and blur is just too much. As you can see on the FSR 3 performance side, doing the same things, you were staying above that 40 frames per second mark rather than dipping under the 30, but we still get a bit of that stutter. Now when we are up in the open world, I do admit that in certain circumstances the FSR 3 does look a little bit better, especially on the screen. You don't see the blur or some of that pixelation as much as you may do on a bigger screen, but I do like the cleaner image of FSR 2 quality. Now this is a work in progress. The mod is not public and it is paid for right now via Luke's Patreon, which I'll link in the description below if you want to test this out for yourself. But when this is more stable, then it will become public as well, and you'll get a lot more benefits. So until the DLSS issue with sharpness and only working on performance mode is worked out, I don't think this is worth entertaining on the Steam Deck right now. And if you're interested in looking at this on other handhelds, then check out our Games in Hand and Ally in Hand channels in the links below as well if you want to see those on those other devices. But for now, it still needs a bit more work and we still need a bit more base performance out of those games. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this mod and whether you're going to be diving in to try this one out anytime soon. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.